Welcome to Huddle Up,
Brought to you by the Fields Huddle Group.
Jaguar senior writer John Oehser, NFL Network analyst and former Jaguar Bucky Brooks, and senior reporter J.P. Shatterick bring you the latest on your Jacksonville Jaguars. Huddle Up starts right now.
All right, well, welcome into Huddle Up with Bucky Brooks. I'm John Oehser from the Hyundai Studios, and Bucky Brooks, as usual, in Los Angeles. And the intro's wrong, Buck. There is no J.P. Shatterick this week. And so we'll muddle through. How about that?
Yeah, I mean, how about that? We have to go. We're going to have to, see if we can work without our teammate being unavailable today.
Well, the one thing JP does that I don't do well is reads. Bucky, you're a TV guy, so you know about reads. I've got to do a read here off the top. This is the Huddle Up with Bucky Brooks is brought to you by Fields Auto Group Jacksonville. See Fields first, Jacksonville's premier luxury auto group. Go to fieldsauto.com. Okay, that's our first read, Bucky, and now we're going to get into yesterday's presser with James Gladstone and Liam Coen. And I will say, Bucky, every time these guys talk, it's more and more impressive to me, and it's not so much what they're saying as their demeanor, their professionalism in it. And Gladstone opened up yesterday with a joke about, hey, if I told you what the number 5 pick was, nobody'd watch the draft. He also talked about trading and setting his draft board, but he did say he believes there are good players at all positions throughout the draft.
Quite frankly, I think that every draft there ends up being players that are very good at all positions from start to finish. And I think that probably doesn't come as a surprise when you look at the most recent drafts that I've been a part of, especially with those day 3 selections and even those undrafted college free agents who in Los Angeles had played a high volume of snaps and contributed in a significant way early in their rookie contract. So, yeah, I think there are some public-facing positions that everybody has a pretty good understanding that are deep in this year's draft, but I don't think there's a single position that we would label as being without talent, and all of them can produce somebody for us that would contribute in a notable way fairly early in their rookie contract along the entirety of the draft.
That's on me, Buck. I acted like I was going to you, and we went to James Gladstone. He takes precedent. That's even right. On your show, he takes precedent. But what do you think about this draft, Bucky, along the lines of what he's saying? Obviously, any GM will tell you that there's talent in every draft. You just got to pick it out. How does this stack up with that?
You know what I think is interesting before I even talk about the class? I think Gladstone's take, I would say, may run counter to the way that some general managers will approach the draft. A lot of people will look at the draft as a glass half empty. Gladstone appears to look at the glass half full. And he appears to have a formula and a recipe, given the success that the Rams have had with, I would say, mid to late round picks, that works for them. Now, over the next week or so, I think my job is to unpack what are some of the common traits that they've found that have allowed them to take day 3 and undrafted free agents and help them succeed. Is that level of experience in terms of how many snaps they played? Is it the redeeming qualities that they look for in a player, whether that's height, size, athleticism, technique, skill, whatever that is? They have unlocked the code that has helped them find so many late-round picks, undrafted free agents that play. And it also helps that they are very adamant, because he says this at every presser. The young guys have to play. So there's something about, hey, man, we got to make sure that we have enough of spots available so there's not blockage for our young guys being able to get onto the field. That means that the front office and the coaches are working together to whoever we bring in, coaches, you got to get them on the field. So let's make sure we take players that you feel confident that we can put them on the field. So I think that's really important, because that kind of frames the way the Jags are evaluating players. In terms of the class, before we went on air, we talked about this class being one where I would say there are probably like 5 elite players in the class. This is me talking, evaluating the draft.
Yeah, that's what most people say, though. Yeah.
Yeah. And in most drafts, you have like 8 to 10 elites. You end up having anywhere from 18 to 22 guys that we would call blue chip first round players. And then the rest you may have another 25 guys that are like that tier that are good, pretty good, very good, that fall in there. This year is different because I told you about the 5 elite players in any order: Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter, Aston Genty. You can throw Tyler Warren in there, and then Jalen Walker, the linebacker from Georgia. To me, those are the elite players. The guys that are outside of that we hear about in the top 10, they're really good, but I can't say that they're elite where they would be transcendent top 5 players in any draft. But those guys I listed, I'm pretty confident that in any draft, they would be in consideration as top 5 picks. Well, if that is what we're talking about, like, hey, these are the A's and we got a bunch of A minuses and B pluses, the job of the Jaguars are to sift through that big clump of players and figure out which guys can play at an A level for them, given the environment, the scheme, and the coaching that will lead to player development that will help them play at a high level. And so that's where the character comes, the football character. That's where the work ethic and all of that stuff comes in, and making sure you match up the player's skill set with how you want to play. And so it's a perfect fit when it comes to the scheme elevating the player.
Yeah, and I think, I think most regimes, I think including the last one, frankly, wanted to play young guys. But there comes a time where the season starts, and sometimes coaches just have a tough time going there, even though they've said it. Certainly, from listening to Liam Coen yesterday, and this is our next soundbite, he has been almost as consistent as Gladstone in saying that he's excited about rookies playing right away.
It is exciting. I mean, those, like I mentioned last time, conversation we had with the staff, and something that we don't want to fear whatsoever. And I think naturally as a coach, you just go to a safe place of a veteran, which I completely respect and appreciate. But it's definitely something we're going to lean into. The guys should be excited about it. You can continue to coach hard and get the best out of these guys when they're freshly in the league and really want to do best. So we're excited about that factor.
And Bucky, let me ask you, coming out of that, how big of a deal for the draft, and this sort of plays into getting guys who can play right away, I assume, but not every team is looking for the same things. And it certainly sounds like Gladstone, we don't know how it'll be as GM, but it certainly sounds like, from listening to him, from talking to people, like he has pretty specific things that he's going to consider a Jaguars player. It probably fits a lot of what they considered Rams players. It would make sense because he came from there. Mm-hmm. But how important can that be late in the draft for a GM? And how much can that help in terms of, hey, maybe 17 other teams don't like this guy, but we're fine with it, and we have the guts to take it in the 4th round because we like it?
That's how it should be. Like there should never draft boards should be like snowflakes. There should never be 2 draft boards that are exactly alike. When you work for a team, you have very specific things that you look for that you want to bring into your team, your organization. Some of those things have been set forth by the owner in terms of like the types of traits or values or things that are very central to what he believes in. Other things are set forth by the front office and coaching staff in terms of the traits and intangibles that are important to them. And then it comes to the skill set. What I hear from Coen and Gladstone when I listen to those snippets back to back, I hear a coaching staff who prefers to play young players because young players coming out of college, they haven't been, I don't want to say tainted by the pro world, but they haven't been influenced by the pro world. Like, hey, well, why are we doing all this work, or why are we working this? Like, this isn't how it should be, because sometimes vets can have that impact. Why are we doing all this? We're pros. When you have younger players who come from a collegiate system where it's been very much a dictatorship by the head coach, they're more apt to buy into a very grinded out, hardened culture that you're trying to create, where extra is the ordinary part. Doing extra is part of what we do. I think they're looking for people, and you hear people say this all the time. I want people that love it, not like it. I want players that love the game. They love the process of getting ready for the game and everything that comes with it, as opposed to people who like the game but love all the other stuff that comes with it. To me, it appears that, and they haven't said this, but it appears that the Jags are embracing more of a blue-collar, workman-like approach, even though it may be what we call an intelligent version of a blue collar organization. When Jim Harbaugh was at Stanford, they called it intellectual brutality. So you had all the nerds playing in a very tough and aggressive demeanor. I get a sense that there's some of this that's coming to Jacksonville, but it may be packaged differently because at the top, Liam and James Gladstone appear to be very cerebral, high IQ, high EQ, emotional intelligence guys. But it appears they want that to convey into a team that is very old school in the way that they approach everything.
Yeah, and it feels like that's sort of what I don't follow the Rams like I do the Jaguars, but my vibe from the Rams has been just that they sort of give off a feel because of McVay of being sort of this high-flying modern offense, when in fact they're more based on the run game and playing off play action. And it's not until you get into the game against them where you realize, oh, this is what these guys do. So it feels a little bit like that philosophically.
Yeah, like the packaging may come off like they're all pizzazz and glitz and glamour, but up under the hood, it's an old school Chevy. You know what I mean? And so that is the thing. And I've always been a believer that the team should reflect the image of the city. So when we think about the city of Jacksonville, we think about the blue collar nature of Jacksonville, the environment or whatever. That's kind of the team that the Jags fans want to see. They want to see a team that works hard, that goes after, that embodies what they live in their daily lives. And to me, I feel like we're getting more to that because all the teams that have really succeeded in Jacksonville have been kind of those grizzled, hardened teams that played a certain way.
Yeah, they've been able to run.
Always, yeah, look, we're going to be physical. We're going to run the ball. Defense is going to play a certain way, and we're going to get after it. That's where the whole Duval and all that other stuff came. To me, I feel like we're getting back to that because there's an edge that Gladstone and Coen operate with that I would say is probably masked by their nice guy demeanors.
Yeah, our final soundbite may be more interesting to me than anybody, but I put together the rundown today, so that's how it's going to be, Buck. Gladstone yesterday talked about when the scouts came in the building, and this is interesting because I think a lot of fans maybe don't grasp. Area scouts really, Bucky, until this week, don't really get in and have meetings. So this was Gladstone's first chance to be around the people who have scouted these players. And he had pretty high praise for that group when he talked to the media yesterday.
Yeah, I don't know that there were any surprises or anything catching me off guard as much as it was. It's been very impressive, the adaptability of that group to say, hey, here are the items that we're emphasizing and that we'll be prioritizing, may look a little different than what you're used to, and being able to see them sort of pivot away from maybe things that they held at a premium in the past. And so that flexibility has really stood out to me amongst the group.
Yeah, and this is fascinating to me, Bucky, because so much of coming in, I think what James Gladstone's major strength is, and I think he has many, but is the ability to get information cleanly from one group to another in a usable way. And that's probably a little bit of gobbledygook in there, but I think you know what I'm talking about. And it's, especially coming in and working with a new staff, hearing what they're saying and applying it to what he's thinking is not an easy thing. In a transition time, it's very important for scouts to know what coaches are looking for and vice versa. It sounds like he's speaking to that a little bit, Bucky.
Yeah, so as everyone should understand, when you have one general manager who kind of sets the table for what the team is looking for in terms of players, and it may be character things, it may be physical traits or whatever. You have that, and so scouts go on the road after, like, they kind of set those parameters, and they go look for players that kind of fit those models. When you have a new general manager come in and he believes in something else, it is on the scouts to adapt to the new way of doing business. And that means that, hey, all those things of the past that maybe we discounted, well, maybe we bring those back into the fold. And so the way that we may have looked at players previously, maybe we need to recheck and say, well, maybe this player fits in this new world, this new environment, based on what Gladstone and Coen and Tony have set forth in terms of, hey, these are the things that are most important for us. It requires people to change. It requires people to really be water, be like water, just move around, be flexible. Here's what I like, bring the information to the people. But more importantly, it requires scouts to really buy into the program quickly. And they got to trust that the new program might be even better than the old program, even though you might have grown up in the old program. And so where loyalties and all that stuff can kind of get in the way, you got to be a professional and you got to be able to move as the room is now moving. And so the fact that he gave the scouting staff compliments suggests that everyone in the room is making the right changes based on what the new parameters are with Coen and Gladstone and Tony Baselli.
I see one other thing before we get to our first break. It's always struck me from the times I've talked to scouts and GMs how important it is for a GM to hear the dialogue of what the scouts are saying. And what I'm getting at is, if the GM isn't hearing it and the scouts sort of aren't willing to offer counter views to the GM, it can become a silo, right? I mean, where you're not really getting the right information because you know the GM's going to go his way anyway. It certainly sounds like Gladstone, from listening to him yesterday, he talked about wanting the conversations about these players from scouts to be water cooler conversations rather than boardroom conversations. And that to me is that he wants to hear these guys really say their opinions rather than give a lot of fake stuff. That was impressive to me, and I'm wondering as a scout if that's impressive to you.
Very impressive, because it is easy to have strong opinions until you have to present those opinions to the decision makers. It's one thing for me to tell you in private and confidence, John, I really love this player. It's another thing when the head coach and the general manager presses me on the player or they give me pushback on my opinion to continue to stand in there.
Right.
To me, what Gladstone is saying is, hey, even though I may have the gavel, I may have the final say when it comes to decision, I am just like everybody else. My opinion is weighted just like everybody else when it comes to it. So do not be afraid to voice your opinion. Now, when we make a decision, that's a Jags decision. But until then, I am welcoming healthy debate, real conversation, so we can really figure out if this player is someone that we really want to be on our team and how will he contribute if he comes to the program. I applaud that, because a lot of people say that,
sure,
but everyone doesn't live that.
It's easy to say. It's hard work to cipher. Sometimes you just want to move on to the next guy.
Yeah.
And it's hard work to actually hear it and have another person's opinion come into what you're thinking. That takes some mental equity.
And the other thing it takes the trust between scout and general manager, scout and superior leader, that if I go strong and have a very convicted opinion on a player, that if the player comes in and it doesn't work out, it doesn't change the way that you view me.
Yeah.
Because we all make mistakes in the evaluation process. And so if you're going to encourage me to take a strong stand, I'm going to take that. But I also need to be able to take that within reason, knowing that, hey, my opinion isn't fact. So if the guy comes in and it doesn't work out, it doesn't now just, hey, you're null and void.
Doesn't make you a bad scout.
Right. There's a human element where we're going to miss. And so there needs to be some grace given to those who may make mistakes, because the worst thing that you can do is, as a scout, is to operate scared to be wrong.
Yeah, you got to,
because if you're scared to be wrong, you'll never go after it, and you'll miss out. And look, man, we all want to hit home runs, and it's easy to say, oh, we'll be good with doubles, but the home runs are the ones that become superstars. And so when you go for home runs, you're going to strike out some. And the key is, can you put your opinion out there? Can you support your opinion as strong as you can, and then live with it once everyone agrees or disagrees with it?
Join us as we kick off the 2025 Duval Draft, presented by Donovan Air Electric Plumbing. Enjoy exclusive appearances from Jaguars players in Jacksonville, live performances by the Roar and D-Line, and a great mix of games, food, and drinks, all set at the iconic beachfront venue Lemon Bar. Don't miss out on the party. Get your tickets now at Jaguars.com. Buck, you going to Lemon Bar?
Yeah, might as well. Why not? We should do it.
Well, you're a beach guy. It's sort of your area, so I know you're familiar with it. It's
I do love the beach. I do.
All right, Bucky. Right now, what are they doing? Take me through now and until the draft. I know Gladstone said yesterday, Summon next week is about a logistical mock draft, basically making sure all the buttons work, which I think people may have laughed at, but that's a big part of it. You don't want something to be unplugged on draft night. But what do they do from here on in?
So now, because the guys are in, you're putting the finishing touches on the board. Everyone is going over their last opinions. They're trying to introduce any last-minute information that they've heard, that they've discovered over the pro day circuit the final few weeks. The medical team comes in, so you begin to talk about those guys that you have to dismiss and remove from the board due to injury concerns. You have the background search. That team comes in. They give all the security clearances and those things. And then you begin to go through these scenarios. And so on our side, we talk about mock drafting. In the room, they talk about various scenarios. Hey, if we're sitting at 5 and these 4 players are gone and this is available, who will we take? Okay, let's go to the second round. Like, all these players are gone. Here's the clump of players that we're doing. On TV, we call it the cluster buster. But what you're trying to do is you're trying to, much like a game, in football, we talk about situational awareness. So you go through a bunch of things in practice. So when you get into the situation in the game, you just react. Same thing happens in the draft room. Hey, let's get to it. We're going through it. Here's what happens. Oh my God, this player is there. So now we can calmly make the decision because we've already gone through this. We've scrimmaged it out. We've had the discussions. There are no surprises. The best draft rooms are calm. Yep. There's a level of poise, and it is just systematic in the way that we operate. There shouldn't be any surprises when it comes to it if we're really prepared. So the next week and a half are going through those scenarios to make sure we're prepared for anything that could occur on draft day.
I remember Bill Polian telling me in Indy, he said the whole myth of like people banging tables during the draft and like yelling across the table, he said, if that's going on, you haven't done your homework. It should be a very methodical at the time it was taking index cards and magnets off the board. I'm curious, Gladstone said yesterday that his board will be set right before he picks. That's a little different than what I'm used to, Bucky. I've heard from different GMs over the years, hey, the board's set X number of days out. Don't go back and mess with your board. Don't overthink it. What's your thought on that? And don't get me wrong. I'm sure the board is all but set, and you're making some last minute decisions. But where do you come down on that?
I think what he's probably saying in terms of being set, yeah, it's always a work in progress until you get to the very end. I would say that the board is probably 90 to 95% set. There are a few decisions that they're that I'll say 90% done. There's still probably a handful of decisions that you want to make between players. And so, for instance, you may have at number 5, you may have 3 guys we're talking about, and we'll just throw out names like let's throw out Mason Graham, let's throw out Jalen Walker, and let's throw Genty. And so then you'll have this conversation with the scouting staff on, okay, who do we like? Who is just the biggest impact? Coaches, what's the plan if we bring Mason Graham in here? What's the plan if Jalen Walker comes in? What's the plan if Genty is the pick? Okay, how do we feel about that? We're good? Okay, so if this scenario comes up, how do we rank them? 1, 2, or 3? And you put it down. And someone is taking notes on all of this. So now when we get to those situations and, all right, 5th pick, Jags are on the clock. Cool. There's no, hey, what are we doing?
Right.
Hey, we good? Is everyone good with what we're doing? Hey, let's get them on the phone and we make the move. So there's some of those things that are going. So to me, he is right. The board is pretty much set. You're just going through those last minute scenarios. Hey, what if a trade pops up? What if the Atlanta Falcons want to come up from 15 to 5 and they're willing to give us X amount? Okay, will we go back to 15? And what are the players that we're potentially looking at now that we move back to 15? Do we feel good about those players? Are those players impactful players? Or now we're just moving to be moving and it's going to take us out of running for a player that could really impact us. All of those conversations are what he's talking about, and that's why the board is almost set.
Sure.
The concrete is drying, but it's not quite hard yet.
He actually used that analogy. Do you favor a smaller group of draftable players for a team? Meaning, some guys will say, hey, we've got X number of guys who are draftable and don't come off of that. Do you think that number should be relatively small for a team in terms of, knowing the clusters, and within that cluster, we have these guys we want?
Yes, I think it should be small. So I've worked for teams where when you look at the total number of prospects on the board, we would try to limit it anywhere between 125 to 150. But I would say the teams that are really good and diligent, 75 to 100 players. Because let's be honest, John, everybody can't play for us, or should be a thing.
Right.
Everybody's not a great fit for us. Let's make sure that the people that we have on the board are people that we legitimately want to take.
Right.
That we don't take somebody that we took him, but he's not really our type guy, but we felt compelled to take him.
Now, is that a matter of you just got to work to make sure that in the fourth round where you're picking, you have a guy there? Or do you have sort of backup guys where, okay, if all our guys are gone, we can live with this?
No, what it should be, if you're pure to it, when you get to that point, if one of your guys isn't there, you trade out.
Okay.
Don't take a player that you don't love. Everybody that you should take, you should feel great about. And when I talk about that, how we're ranking players, remember, we talked about snowflakes and no two boards being alike, and people don't grade people the same. Well, if we put 100 from 1 to 100, how we grade them to guys that we love, guys that fit all of our things. Because remember, it should be very, very hard to get on our board based on the traits and intangibles and characteristics that we talked about on and off the field.
There's only so many intangibly rich guys out there, Buck.
Right. And so when you put 100 up there, John, well, then everyone doesn't have those same guys.
Right.
So trust me, it sounds crazy, but it always works out. If you only have 75 to 100, if you put those guys up there, there are always going to be guys available. When we get to 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round, those guys will be there. And you're also going to have a small board of what we call undrafted free agents, guys that we may not have a draftable grade, but they have redeeming qualities that we like to bring them into camp. There are always a handful of guys that are there. But typically, in my experience, that top 100, there'll always be more than enough guys for you to pick from.
So let's get into it at 5 to close it out. I mean, I actually saw a draft last week that had Abdul Carter slip in there. I hadn't even considered that as a possibility. If you were doing a mock today, who do you mock to the Jags?
It's really
hard.
Because we go through this. No. I'm saying we go through this. We do it so many different times or whatever. To me, I still would say, depending on who's there, and we're going to assume Cam Ward is gone at 1, Travis Hunter goes at 2. At 3, the New York Giants have to make a decision. I still believe that they take a quarterback at 3. I just can't imagine how they not take a quarterback. But let's say the quarterback is gone. So now you're talking about the New England Patriots having to make a decision between Abdul Carter and Will Campbell, potentially. Let's say they take Abdul Carter. So now you're sitting with the board right open. You got Will Campbell, you have Genty, you have Mason Graham, you have Jalen Walker. I still believe that Mason Graham is a really good player. He fits the need on the inside as a culture driver. His impact, his demeanor, the way that he plays the game, to me, works for where he is. Now, packaging, he's not going to look the part because people want him to be like a superhero and Adonis in terms of physical build. But if we're looking at the tape, there are not many guys that are better than him on the tape. If we talk about the running back, and there'll be some conversation about that, the running back, remember, I talked about the 5 elites.
Right.
He's the elite. Graham is not an elite. The only thing is, how good do you feel about taking a running back at 5? If you feel like the running back is Saquon Barkley-ish, if you feel like the running back for Rams people is Todd Gurley-like offensive player of the year potential, you take him and you live with it because everything that they've talked about doing is helping the quarterback. The one thing I know helps the quarterback is a strong running game. When you have a dominant running game with multiple backs that you can throw out, it eases some of the pressure on Trevor Lawrence to have to carry the offense. And let's be honest, we've never seen an offense that wasn't number 16 dependent.
Right.
I would like to see an offense that's not everything weighs on number 16 having to play great every week. In a perfect world, We need him to play great 5 to 6 times a year, and then the team can carry us those other 10, 11, 12 games. I would like to see an offense that has that kind of capability.
Yeah, we talk on occasion. So if we talked about this last week, forgive me, listeners, I think it's tougher to take a tight end at 5 than a running back, just philosophically. And maybe that's changing.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I think if you go back and you look in history, it's not worked out well for guys playing tight end that have been taken in the top 10.
Well, that's what I mean. I think it's harder. I think that position may be more of a risk than a running back, even though running back gets sort of the shade, if you will, is, hey, you can't take a guy that high.
So it's funny because I looked at in the last 10 years, the running backs that have been taken in the top 10, the only bust that you could really talk about being a top 10 running back, of those guys, it's like Saquon, it's Christian McCaffrey, it's Bijan Robinson, it's Todd Gurley, it's all these other guys. The only one that you kind of could talk a little bit about would be Leonard Fournette.
Yeah.
He would be the only one at 4. Ezekiel Elliott, all the other running backs that have been taken in the top 10, they've been productive, they've worked.
And even Leonard had moments. Even Leonard was productive out of the box. So, I mean, it's...
Right. And so when we talk about that, I think there's a lot of fear, like, value, because we become super smart with the analytics and those things. But history tells you that if you take a running back that high, it's unlikely that they're going to flame out. It's just unlikely. It's unlikely that they're going to do it. Now, is your team ready to handle that? That's the question. But as a tight end, the tight end is more dependent upon the quarterback and other stuff to be able to do it. And I'll be honest, when you look at the tight ends that have really been dominant throughout, George Kittle was a 5th-round pick. Travis Kelce, I think, was a 3rd or 4th-round pick. I mean, it's been proven that you don't have to use that.
No, there's more non-top 15 great tight ends in history than there are top 15s. I mean, that's not even it's a very odd position like that. So, all right, Bucky, I could do this all day. I know you don't have all day, so we're not going to do that. But
one day, though. One day. Maybe, you know what?
We'll have a marathon Huddle Up podcast.
Or maybe one day we just go live during an OTA session when everything is important and we just talk about all things Jaguars while the OTA is going on in the background. Because I know how much you love that stuff.
I would do that, except I'll be busy charting plays. So I really don't have time on those days, Bucky. I'm all in on OTAs. Bucky Brooks will be joining us again next week on the final Huddle Up podcast before the 2025 draft. Look forward to that. JP Shattuck will be back. Bucky, talk to you then.
All right, later.